So today in Math 3, we're going to be finding the inverses algebraically, okay? So, how to do this. To find the inverse of a function, you're going to switch the x and y, and then solve for y. So let's show you how this works. So all these say, some of these say f of x or g of x or y. F of x or g of x, anytime you see a function, you can rewrite that as a y value, okay? So if we're finding the inverse, and we're going to use the reminder up there, we're going to switch the x and the y term. So the y becomes x, and the x becomes y. And now what you're going to do is you're going to solve the equation for y. So you're going to have to basically do the opposite of stuff to get the y by itself. Okay, so how we do this? We're going to, for this problem, we're going to add 16. So we have x plus 16. So we're going to show that you're doing it. You're not actually going to add 16 and x together because we don't know what x is. Then we have negative 4y. All right, the last step to get y by itself is we have to divide both sides by negative 4. So y, I'm going to put it opposite. I'm going to put the also the inverse sign. The inverse of y is equal to x plus 16 divided by negative 4. And there you go. Okay, next, number 2. We have f of x. That could be just rewritten as y if you wanted to. So when we flip this around and switch the x and the y, we're going to write this as x is equal to y plus 1 cubed minus 5. Again, now we have to do the equation in reverse. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we have x plus 5 is equal to y plus 1 cubed. Okay, now to get rid of that cubed, we're going to take the cube root of both sides. Okay, so the cube root and the cubed will cancel themselves out. So we have the cube root, of x plus 5 is equal to y plus 1. And the last step to get y by itself is subtract 1 from both sides. So we'll get y, the inverse of y, is equal to the cube root of x plus 5 minus 1. Don't forget to put that little 3 next to the radical to indicate that it is a cube root. If you don't put a little 3 there, you're saying it's a square root, which is not correct. Okay. Next, so we have g of x equals 4 times the square root of x minus 8 plus 7. So we're going to replace that g of x with an x, and replace the x on the other side with a y. Okay, now for these problems, if you think of order operation, you're almost doing the reverse of order of operation, okay? Because the first thing that has to move in this particular problem is not the 4 in front of the square root sign, but the 7. So we're going to subtract 7 on both sides. So we have x minus 7 is equal to 4 times the square root of y minus 8. Okay. Next, we have to get that 4 out of there. We're going to divide both sides by 4. So we have x minus 7 divided by 4 equals the square root of y minus 8. Okay. Next, before we can get to that negative 8 inside that square root sign, we have to get rid of the square root sign. So the opposite of square root is squared. So we're going to square this whole thing. Now you don't actually have to do that. You're just showing that you're doing it by putting that squared around that parentheses. You can just leave it just like this. Equals y minus 8. And the last step to get y by itself is to add 8. So you're just going to add it to the outside. So we have x minus 7 divided by 4 squared plus 8 equals y. I'm going to put the, actually, you know what? I'm going to flip that around. Just because I like to see it that way. All right, and there you go. There's your answer for the inverse. Okay, so we're going to keep working on more examples. If you start to get the hang of it, that's awesome. If you want to see some more examples, because these can be a little bit tricky, All right, so we have h of x equals the fifth root of negative 5x plus 7. So we're going to have this say x is equal to the fifth root of negative 5y plus 7. All right, the first step in solving this for y, now that we've switched the two x and y's to get front with each other, is we're going to raise this to the fifth power. This will get rid of the fifth root. So we don't really need the parentheses around the x. So we're just raising that to the fifth power. Equals the fifth root and the fifth power go away. Negative 5y plus 7. We're going to subtract 7 from both sides. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 5. So the inverse y of x to the fifth minus 7 divided by negative 5. All right. Number 5. We switch around the x and the y. Okay. The first step in solving this for y would be to add 4. So you have x plus 4 is equal to negative 1/2 y. All right, for this, you can divide both sides by negative 2, or no, sorry, by negative 1/2, or you could just multiply by negative 2. Okay. Now, when you're doing this on the left side, you're multiplying x plus 4 times negative 2, so the whole thing. So you can just leave it as inverse of y is equal to negative 2 times x plus 4. If you multiplied it out, that wouldn't be wrong. It's just not necessary to do. All right. And that's it. All right. Number 6. So we're going to switch around the x and the y. We're going to add 6 to both sides to get the y, start to get y by itself. And divide both sides by negative 2. So the inverse of y is equal to x plus 6 divided by negative 2. I just got 3 more examples, so hopefully this helps you get better at these problems. All right. Again, we have f of x. That's just going to turn into x, because we can replace f of x with a y, equals negative 2 over 5 times x. Okay, so what we can do is we can multiply by the reciprocal of that number, which is negative 5 over 2. So the inverse of y will be negative 5 over 2 times x. All right, number 8. If x is equal to negative 2 plus the quantity of x minus 1 cubed. First step, that should be a y. That is always something we forget. All right, first step, again, is going to be adding 2 to both sides. That's the first thing that has to go away before you can cube root both sides of this. To get rid of that cubed, you have to cube root it. So you have the cube root of x plus 2 is equal to y minus 1. And last step is you add 1 to both sides. So the inverse of y will be the cube root, that's ugly, cube root of x plus 2 plus 1 on the outside of the square root sign, or the radical sign. All right, last one. Switch the x and the y. I did it again. Sorry about that. All right. So before we can square root both sides to get rid of the squared, we have to divide both sides by 2. So we have x over 2 is equal to y plus 2 quantity squared. To get rid of that squared, we square root both sides. So we have the square root of x divided by, let me make that bigger. equals y plus 2. And then we're going to subtract 2 in this problem. So the inverse of y is going to equal, let's put that up, the square root of x over 2 minus 2. And there we go. All right, there you have it. That's how to find the inverse algebraically. We did a number of examples. All right, it is very important for these problems because they are a little more tricky than some of the problems you've had in the past with inverses, that you try and practice these problems. So make sure you do the practice sheet and then ask questions if you get stuck. All right, good luck.